All right, hi, and welcome to another episode of Have You Seen My Film, a Kinema podcast. We are here with Marc Iserlis, the head of Republic Film. And if you're not familiar, Republic.com is a regulated investment platform on which filmmakers or any founder or creator can raise money and share the financial upside with their fans. But we'll dig into how that all works. Marc is no stranger to raising money for films. As an executive producer, he has successfully raised for at least 8 films that I know of, one of which was my favorite called Dali Land, which we had the honor of having on Kinema. And since launching Republic Film, he has helped filmmaker Robert Rodriguez and Pressman Film each raise over $2 million and over $6 million for Eli Roth's new horror studio, all on Republic.com. So today we're going to talk about crowd investing, what it is, how it works, and is it right for you as a filmmaker? So thank you for being here, Marc.
Thank you so much, Christy. So glad to finally get on here and resume our little road show that we have done a few times over the years, which I'm very honored to have done with you at different festivals.
Likewise, we had a good show. We had a good run for a bit. You were talking funding, I was talking distribution. So this is a nice little reunion.
I think there's more ahead of us, I think, in this day and age, and I'm sure we'll get into some of it. The landscape is changing and disrupting in many ways where our little roadshow will be more relevant than ever.
I think so, but you are leading some of that disruption. So I am not familiar with any other crowd financing platform. I actually not even sure I'm using the terms right. So tell us what exactly, dumb it down for me. What is crowd investing? How is it different than crowdfunding?
Great. And that's sort of a distinction that I have been talking about and trying to raise awareness of as well. Crowdfunding is what we have seen over the years, things like Seed and Spark and Kickstarter, and it's great. You put your project up and fans essentially are giving money, they're donating money in exchange for supporting the project and having certain perks, titles, merch, etc., cool access. Where crowd investing comes in is, sorry to get boring for a second, but a lot of people don't know, this is pretty crazy in the US, that there's very strict securities laws in our country, and that comes from the big Wall Street crash 100 years ago, where the SEC then created these rules where unaccredited investors are not permitted to invest in private market opportunities or assets. So to be an accredited investor, you have to have a net worth of $1 million or earn a certain amount per year. If you don't have that, you can basically only invest your capital into the stock market or the casino or whatever. Well, 10 years ago, the Obama administration created the Jobs Act, which creates exemption to that law, allowing for certain raises if they file with the SEC to issue securities or access investment from everyday unaccredited folks. And very few sort of platforms over the years have specialized in that, because not only do you need to acquire certain licenses and a funding portal, et cetera, become a broker dealer, it also, you have to dot the I's and cross the T's very carefully to abide by the securities laws. And so very few companies in America have these licenses that allow startup people, tech, real estate, gaming, all these places to basically raise capital from everyday folks. So Republic is a platform that has all these licenses globally, a community of 3 million who have invested over $3 billion into tech, startup, real estate, gaming. When I saw that they had these licenses, I said, wow, we have to bring this to film and entertainment. Because really the only ways to, the main ways traditionally to raise capital for films is high net worth individuals, the yacht folks at Cannes, the patrons of the arts, and the studio deals who increasingly call the shots and have all the leverage. This now opens up a third way of investing in films, which is a filmmaker can now tap their audience and bring them in just like you would those yacht people as individual equity investors. Republic sits as one item on their cap table and basically allow for everyday fans from $100 all the way up to $1 million to share in the back end in that waterfall. And so the difference is, right, you get a share in a film and get to enjoy the equity financial potential upside of that.
So in a you said like a Seed and Spark campaign, I'm going to make a donation essentially. I'm giving money away to support the arts and I'm going to receive some sort of incentive back, which is great. A lot of people give to the arts just to give and to make sure the project comes into fruition. But in Republic, if I'm putting money in, I'm actually owning a piece. I have an equity and I have a stake in that film's success. Is that correct?
Exactly.
And then how do you decide, could any film be on Republic or is there an application process?
So this is, we both would want to, evaluate together what is the right path for this film. And in many ways, the right path is kind of crowdfunding. There might be a passionate community that wants to see that film. You might even gain access to that film, kind of like maybe a Patreon style. It comes down to the narrative. And I can go through a couple of examples. So for example, like with Pressman Film, producers of American Psycho, Wall Street, Bad Lieutenant, The Crow, Badlands, all these epic sort of independent films. They've always been innovators in how to do independent film, even from like going out to the festivals and doing pre-sales based on a movie poster. They're doing AR, VR. And so they said, let's change financing as well. In that sense, they're like, let's make more American Psychos and Wall Streets again in this age of sequels and reboots. You've got a passionate fan base there. And they, offered them a chance to invest into the development of these films. And basically they're giving out development style return structures to all these fans. A piece of your principal and your premium when a film gets greenlit, a piece of the producer's fee, a piece of the back end, a piece of the sequel rights fee.
That sounds incredibly complicated. So for the Pressman Films example, they had a slate of films and they had a slate of IP they had access to, and they went out to those fandom communities of those different films. Is that correct?
Exactly. And they had different strategies to do that. So Robert Rodriguez, his was like, I'm the maverick of film. I have my own studio in Austin, the rebel without a crew. I'm going to get my own development financing, make badass, John Wick style $10 million action films that are quite profitable and convert with my fans and give them some of the upside rather than just the suits or the executives. That sort of rebellious, cool thing that he did. And he went on Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss. He held an awesome event at South by and he raised $2 million as well for a development slate. And if you go to their websites, republic.com/Pressman, republic.com/Rodriguez, these campaigns are now closed, but you can kind of see them talk about how the breakdown of revenue sharing works. And those examples are revenue sharing opportunities into development slates. Eli Roth, conversely, said, I'm going to make a new company. So what if fans could invest and own the next Blumhouse with me? That kind of thing. It's like, what if you'd been on the ground floor with all these franchises? Skybound, similarly, the guys who did the company behind The Walking Dead and Invincible TV shows, they raised $18 million on our platform from 5,000 fans, an opportunity to invest in a studio with such premium IP. Eli Roth was a new company, new IP, but again, going to the horror festivals, getting on podcasts and saying, the studios won't allow me to make all those disgusting, crazy horror movies that I wanted to make. I'm going to make my own studio to make crazy, unrated films. Last year's most profitable film was Terrifier 3, and that was an unrated, event-driven audience film. And so, Eli, he also sold out his campaign from over 2,500 fans.
For all of these, it sounds like there's existing fan bases. It sounds like any film could apply or to potentially get their film up on Republic. It sounds like there is maybe some sort of curation or filtering because you want to make sure they are, all the fancy words you said about SEC and finances and all of that. But you have to look out for your company. And so I'm assuming there's some sort of filtering process. And then on top of that, they should also have an idea of who their audience is as a filmmaker, as a creator, or what IP they have access to or what communities they have access to. I guess, what are some of the foundational pieces you need to have to launch a crowd investing campaign?
For sure. And to bring that point home about narrative and marketing strategies, you want to have some way where you know that you are going to go viral with your audience or a audience. So in all those examples that I sort of colorfully gave, they had passionate communities based on their obviously talent-driven, access. But it doesn't and it shouldn't have to be that way. Let's say you're a documentary and you're tapping into a social cause. What if you got an organization to promote to their mailing list? This movie needs to be made. This cause needs to be seen. What if you're a film, that's trying to get distribution, obviously, at the festivals? And, you've got an audience winner. When you go to the Sundance, you check the box for what you want to vote on. Well, what if you could also invest in the distribution of that film and a film could take distribution into its own hands through the Sundance community or a festival community? You could be an athlete or a producer doing a film about a sports team or a band, and knowing that if they come on as EP or allow their fan bases to sort of have access to this investment opportunity, you can do something that way. Obviously, what we see day in, day out coming up ahead is the creator economy. I mean, these creators and influencers on YouTube or their channels have tens of millions of followers. Well, AI is about to even further democratize their tools of production. Well, they can now make their MVP or their sizzle and say, hey, fans, let's make this thing together and fund the production and call the shots and share in the upside together.
Oh, that makes complete sense. I'm hearing more about creators launching their own studios. It's not just having a few producers around. They're full-blown studios with big brand deals. And so if someone could invest in the next Mr. Beast or Jordan the Stallion, yes, it seems like an amazing opportunity to further engage their fans too. Are there any sort of, what are the risks? In crowdfunding, the risk is that if you don't hit your goal, you don't get to receive all of those funds if you don't hit 80% of your goal. Do you have a fundraising goal on Republic? And what happens if you don't hit it?
A lot of that stuff kind of works similarly to crowdfunding. You have a page. Like I said, you could check out Eli's at republic.com/horror section. That was the name of his new studio. You can make it so that you have to raise a certain amount. And if not, you don't get to use it. You could set a target goal of $1 million. If you raise that million, you'll develop. If you raise 500K, you'll develop 3 movies. If you raise $1 million, you'll develop 6 movies. Both Pressman and Robert Rodriguez overshot that mark, and so they're going to make more movies now. If you are a single film and you are sort of raising up, or a company raising up to X% of that film's equity, you can just dictate the use of proceeds that you will use that money towards production or company building or PR, etc., and keep what you make.
Oh, that's interesting. So then if within your slate, you could include like P&A costs. Because technically, I guess if it's a slate, each individual film has its own budget, its own P&A, or if you're doing the company, all of that is included. And so then how does it work? You started explaining this a bit on how investors get paid out. Each one of those sites, we can go to each of their sites to see each one. Do you have any data or case studies on how long it takes to pay out? I think some of us on the indie side know it often takes a while to pay back, especially if you're the producer on it. Does this model allow filmmakers to get paid or producers to get paid quicker? Or is it too early for that?
Well, we have just launched all the examples that the 4 we did one for Ron Perlman recently as well. So they've just sort of completed their raises this year. However, what's really cool is Pressman Film are already set to start repaying their investors in their development slate within 6 months since their campaign closed. One of their films from that slate has gotten distribution with Neon, Bad Lieutenant, Tokyo. And part of the investors' development financing went towards that film. And they're going to get paid back a piece of their financing from their investment from that film. So that's really cool from venture and from film precedents. And otherwise, treat us basically as another financier. The film is still led by its producer through the distribution process, but now basically fans get to sit in that process.
Wow. I did not know that. That's so cool about Neon. What is your role in this? So yes, you're leading the Republic Film as the head and as a strategist, but how involved do you get on the individual campaigns?
Yeah. Well, again, I know that we're jumping around asking your questions, but right. We sort of, when a project comes to me or comes to us, we do sort of ascertain like, what is the need here? What is the audience size? Does it make more sense to go through the hoops of correctly filing with the SEC and marketing in a certain way and tracking investments, paying out investments, which is obviously much more, legwork than a crowdfunding campaign, I guess, where you're not going to trip on any of those legalities or distributions. And we assess the viability, and then we do help with sort of the structuring. So the financial structuring, as well as the marketing campaigns, which have to explain this mouthful of the difference between funding and an investment opportunity. So with Pressman and Robert Rodriguez, that's explaining how development financing works and how you get paid back from a slate of films, some which will go into production, some which may not make it through development, and how you recoup from that basket of films. Versus in Eli Roth's case, you're actually just having shares in a company. So it's a lot simpler. The company has a valuation, you own shares, and then as that company hopefully grows into the next Blumhouse or Disney, your stake in that private company will increase. And that is sort of the revolution that's happening here on a wide scale, is the opening up of access to these investment opportunities for everyday retail folks. Like right now, just to get in on private markets, whether it's a cool studio like Skybound, which people have never had the opportunity to invest in before it went public, or even allocations into blue chip companies like SpaceX, TikTok that we've done, we're finally opening up access to the trillions of dollars in retail households who have never had access to these cool alternative investments.
Yeah. So you're helping with the marketing side of it. So you're helping find those retail investors in a sense on the film side?
We obviously help with the technical structuring of things. We shepherd the issuer, we call them, the project through the process. Obviously, Republic having done 2,000 of these raises across multiple industries, as your distribution playbook does, give our best practices to raise. But the onus on driving the awareness of the campaign comes from the project or the talent or the producer. At the end of the day, being such a strictly regulated investment platform, we have to treat every issuer the same. So every issuer on our side would get an email blast when it launches, another email blast when it crosses, let's say, 500K. A certain amount of social posts per campaign. But really, the Republic community comes in most visibly on the back of the momentum of the producer or the filmmaker telling their fans, hey guys, let's make a movie together.
I think that's totally fair. That's what happens in regular crowdfunding anyway, or fundraising anyway. You've given a few good examples. So I was going to ask you to dig into a case study, but I think maybe instead I'll phrase it this way, because you can probably pull from all of those or feel free to dig into one. But what makes a campaign successful? You've touched on this, but if I'm a filmmaker listening to this right now, what should I be paying attention to? How should I assess myself to decide if a Republic campaign is right for me or my slate or my production company? And what should I make sure I have in place before launching? Or what are some tips if I choose to do this?
I think, what we've really tried to establish at Republic Film, proving out this paradigm shift, that it's not a cry for money. It's the ultimate fan engagement campaign. What better fan engagement than to own a piece of your favorite IP or the next project with your favorite filmmaker, whether it's their next development slate or having a piece of their next film, which could become a huge successful franchise, or like I mentioned with the distribution example, helping a film get out there with P&A. So I think the narrative is the most important because that's what's going to enable the project, the filmmaker, the producer, whatever, the talent to most passionately promote this opportunity to their fans. Like, it's not just any old celebrity be like, oh, I want a movie. I want to get money for a movie. And, I'll tweet a couple times that this will fill itself. I think you have to get creative with it. Like another idea that I had was like, what if Richard Linklater or Ethan Hawke or something invited the city of Austin to invest and own a piece of Dazed and Confused 2 or the next kind of film? I won't say the specific name, but there's a very cult like rock band that was doing a documentary about themselves. A lot of their listeners now are probably middle-aged hedge fund managers, which is what justifies how expensive their tickets are at Madison Square Garden. They would have leapt to be an investor in the documentary of their favorite film or athlete or sports team. So I think with that sort of narrative gusto, you can really have fun with it. And it is new news to be able to invest in this kind of thing.
So from the examples you've given, it sounds like you're tapping into fandoms to get people to support the film. Are you also finding that those fans are becoming even bigger fans afterwards, or they're really amplifying the film? Meaning is there a difference? Would they have supported the film anyway as a fan? Or do you think they're going to support more now that because they're also an investor in some way?
I think so. And there is a difference in scale. Like when you have that level of fandom, there's like a flywheel effect where it attracts, of course, outside investors who might not have been film fans, but want access to this new alternative investment in their portfolio. But then arguably the film does better as well because you have this army of stakeholders going out to promote it to their friends and family to go see it because they can make money off of it, as long as, of course, see their name in lights. And on the Robert Rodriguez campaign, actually, if you scroll down to the discussion page, that community has taken a life of its own. It's incredible. So Robert, he was doing a development slate, but he branded it as a new action label. He launched Brass Knuckle Films. These investors took over the discussion page. They called themselves Brass Knuckle Warriors. Somebody self-appointed himself, like the mayor of it. They greet each other good morning. They share personal stories. And what was really cool about Robert's campaign is every investor got to pitch him a film as part of the slate.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Only 2 weeks ago, Robert announced the winner of that competition. He announced 2 winners, in fact, he's going to co-develop action films as part of that slate. And I mean, when you have that chance to be a real producer and developer, I think it takes it to another level.
No, I think so too. I want to wrap up with just 2 questions. So one, I want to get your thoughts. Let's go high level real quick. Where do you see crowd investing fit in the wider direction that we're going as an industry with what's happening between technology to some of the studios merging? What are you seeing and where does crowd investing fit in?
Totally. So I mentioned it briefly earlier, looking at the landscape as a whole, like YouTube this year overtook Disney as the largest distributor. I feel like creators are the new celebrities with their tens of millions of followers, while, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are in their 60s now. And AI is going to further democratize the tools of production or maybe even bring down budgets that accommodate for more diverse ways of funding and independent funding. And we're obviously all in this kind of shared mission of propelling independent film in a time where it's maybe needed more than ever with franchise fatigue or whatever audience demands and the creator economies getting their stuff out there. And so where we fit into that disruption is we are finally that platform that allows for these filmmakers to tap their audiences for investment capital, but also as a marketing campaign. I would love for, production companies, big studios to have this as an arm, just as a new tool in their arsenal. They can syndicate risk by allowing fans to come in and own a piece with them. Even if the movie's complete, it's sort of such a cool kind of fan engagement play. It speaks to sort of what's happening in the wider trend of opening up investment access to new audiences. And what Republic can also do is allow investors to trade their share in a film on a secondary market. So that happens after 1 year securities lockup per the SEC. But basically, what could be really exciting as well is if you had a share in the next American Psycho and that became a huge cult film, you could trade your share in the future to someone else who wants to receive those revenue rights in perpetuity. And so I guess it's to say that, tech is really changing the way films are made. I think in terms of the types of films, we'll have different buckets of supply from AI still to the premium traditional big studios, but there is a place for financing to innovate.
Wow. That I had not thought about the trading. I guess, well, that's a whole other conversation. Once people start trading their shares,
we just want to make film first. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your support. Thank you for helping get more films made, and for being an innovator in the space. So before we go, where can filmmakers or other industry members find you or Republic?
Republic.com/film. You'll see some of the examples that I mentioned. You can check out the pages and watch the sizzle videos on those pages to see really hear from the horse's mouth. And you can email us as well on that page, and we can discuss if the idea is a great fit.
Cool. Well, Marc Iserlis, head of Republic Film, thank you so much. And it's always nice to see you.
Thank you, Christy.
And that's our episode. Thank you to our special guest, our producer and editor, Ron Pissarro, and you, the filmmakers, creators, marketers, and distributors that are dedicated to connecting audiences with great films.